The nervous system is a network of specialised cells that help the body communicate to different areas. It handles what the senses detect, interprets this, and then controls our motor response to this. It is divided up into two sections: the central nervous system, or CNS, which contains the brain and spinal cord and is the command centre of the body, and the peripheral nervous system, or PNS, which is everything else outside of the brain and spinal cord and carries messages to and from the CNS. The PNS can be broken up into two sections as well: the sensory division, which is responsible for processing all our sensory impulses and carries these to the brain, and the motor division, which is responsible for carrying CNS messages to the effector organs. From here, we can split the motor division in two again, and we get the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is responsible for all our voluntary responses, like reaching out to touch something or kicking a ball. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for the involuntary reactions we have to certain situations. It can be divided into two subsections: the sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight response, either we run away or we fight the threat, and the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest response. This brings us back to normal after the threat has disappeared. In order to keep ourselves dynamically balanced, these two subsections of the autonomic nervous system need to be kept balanced.
Homeostasis is the ability of a system or living organism to adjust its internal environment to maintain a stable equilibrium. Two types of feedback mechanisms classify homeostasis: positive and negative. Negative feedback loops mostly control homeostasis. It is a mechanism which brings the variable back to its ideal state. A good example is the regulation of body temperature within warm-blooded animals. Within a positive feedback mechanism, the opposite occurs, where the output this time enhances the original stimuli. An example of this is during childbirth, when hormones secrete, provoking an amplified experience. A group of specialized cells, named receptors, can detect these changes in the environment. This detection is what we call stimulus. Receptors are within sensory organs which are sensitive to specific types of stimuli. Our eyes, for example, are sensitive to light, our ears to sound and the position of our head, and our tongue is responsive to chemicals within foods. The central nervous system sends these signals throughout the body to effector cells. Effector organs produce the response action to stimuli. Within multicellular organisms, an effector response is represented by a muscle contracting in response to limb movement, or a gland secreting a hormone into the bloodstream. We refer to this process of processing information received by the brain as integration. The nervous system retrieves data from the various sensory receptors, combining them, while each section of the brain is combining pieces of information acquired from other areas of the brain. Integration is a process which is fundamental to our body's ability in functioning effectively and efficiently. Furthermore, looking deeper into the means of integration, it is carried out by a process called synaptis. This occurs within the synaptic cleft, tiny gaps where two neurons meet. Neuron A secretes a chemical into the gap which then diffuses. This promotes the transmission of an electrical signal from neuron B. We refer to these chemicals as neurotransmitters, which act as communicator promoters between neurons or neuron and a muscle cell. There are 8 primary neurotransmitters: dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, endorphins, serotonin, glutamate, and GABA.
There are 5 senses in our body that we use to interpret our surroundings. These are sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, which are the sense organs which have specialized receptors for detecting environmental cues, like stimuli in the environment. A stimuli is a form of energy, whether it be electrical, mechanical, chemical, or radiant. Sense organ transforms energy from the stimuli into a nerve action potential. Perception of a sensation is determined by which part of the brain receives the action potential. For example, the eye responds to light, the ears respond to vibrations, touch responds to pressure receptors. In a dangerous environment, these affect the fight or flight response in an animal. The fight or flight response is known as the instinctive physiological response to a threatening situation, which readies one either to resist forcibly or to run away. The eyes are a pair of globular organs in the head of humans and vertebrae, where it contains 70% of all sensory receptors. Taste buds on the tongue have taste receptors that respond to different tastes, which triggers the action potentials through the neurons in the facial nerve. Once the stimuli has entered the sense organ and finds its way to the appropriate neuron, it can then branch back up to the brain through different cortexes, parts of the brain that influence the emotions. The endocene refers to a gland that has no duct and releases directly into the blood. These senses help an organism to respond to the fight or flight response, which can be a physiological or chemical response based on the environment and stimuli around them.